Hello, everybody. So we're gonna get started here with GitHub. It's a bane of some people's existence, but I want to make it the blessing for yours. GitHub is a tool that is industry wide. Everybody uses it. It's used for collaborative work on software. There are other versions like Azure DevOps. That's really the only one that's coming to mind. But there are all kinds of other versions that you could be using instead of GitHub, but this is the most common that people use, mostly because it's free. But the big thing that it's used for, again, is for collaborating across projects. Not only that, it's really good for backing up your work. Um, so we're going to, if this is your first time using GitHub, this video might be a little, it's not going to go through like the download process and the making a new, from the very fresh open of GitHub desktop, making a new repository. This is assuming you already have used GitHub a little bit, but you just might need a refresher. That being said, if it is still your first time using it, you might be able to follow along. I'll try and make some accommodations here and there with it. Um, Now, big thing that we need to do is if you freshly downloaded GitHub, you probably have a create a new repository button right when you open up GitHub Desktop. If you already have GitHub Desktop open, maybe you can see I have this on one of my other projects, you'll want to go to File and look for the new repository button. This is just generally what you're going to be looking for to get a new repository started. We have the ability to clone repositories that would let you download something off of GitHub. But for right now, with our new 110 project, we're just going to create a new one. Now, I'm going to name this 110JTerm, and I'll show you why in just a second. Um, you can go ahead and name this whatever your project you want to name it. This isn't the most important. This is what will appear on GitHub on the website when you get there. You're going to go and find your Unity project. So mine is on my desktop. I'm going to go in here, select folder, and I'm actually going to, never mind. Um, and then we're going to go to our git ignore and select Unity. Now, a git ignore is basically a file that gets saved into your file location, wherever you set the local path, that says, hey, this is a commonly used tool. These are all the files that we don't want to save to GitHub. For Unity, for example, one common file that's in there is the layout of your Unity, because Unity saves per project all the different where all your windows are and all that stuff. It's not necessary. It's not needed. So git ignores basically say, hey, don't include those files. License, you really don't need to worry about unless you are planning on distributing this widely um, and all that stuff. Really things you need to worry about later. So then I'm going to go ahead and click Create Repository, which is all well and good. It's looking nice. But if I go to where my Unity project is saved, this is my 110JTerm folder, we'll see that it made another folder called 110JTerm. This is one of the caveats that just personally I always run into. Um, it made another folder called 110JTerm. That's the description. That's what I told it to name it, right? I'm going to take all the files in here. Now, you might not actually see some of these files. The most important one is this git ignore, or this .git. That's what actually says, hey, GitHub, this is where you're putting things. If you don't, you'll want to go to View, and if you're on Windows 10, it's still View, it's just somewhere different. And you'll want to look through here for hidden items. All right, if I turn this off, you see I see my .git attributes and .git ignore, but I don't see the .git folder. And that's because Windows tends to try and hide really important folders from the average user, which you are no longer. You're a developer. Um, so now I'm going to take these and actually move them up into my Unity project. Okay, I already did this once on another um, take on this video, so I'm going to go ahead and hit replace because I already had a git ignore in here. But then we can go ahead and delete that folder that we made, this 110JTerm folder, or whatever you called it. So now we should see in our normal Unity project, so the folder that has our assets, library, logs, all that stuff that comes with Unity, we should see a .git folder, a git attributes file and a gitignore file. Okay, so now if you go to GitHub Desktop, it's going to be screaming. It's like, oh, I can't find it. Where'd you put it? It says that I was looking for 110jterm, 110jterm. So if I hit locate, it's going to take me straight to the folder that it's supposed to. It's intuitive. This is a process a lot of people go through, and it understands like, hey, let me take it up one step. It's probably where everything went. Now you should be seeing about 30, 35 changes. If you're seeing thousands, then it means something has gone wrong. Okay, then I would rewind the video and take a look and go see what's going on. Now, every time that you commit something to GitHub, committing just means, hey, I am making this commit on my current branch. And I know that's a lot of words, but just think of GitHub as a big tree, and we're just walking up and making it taller and taller and taller every time that we add code to it. In my summary, I have to name the growth of the tree, right? I have to name what is it that I'm making here. So this is just going to be my initial commit, okay? This, if I commit to main, means that, hey, it's been committed, but it isn't actually up on GitHub yet. And actually, this whole repository is not up on GitHub yet. We have this publish repository button right here. I'm going to go ahead and click this. We'll see, okay, the name for the GitHub repository is going to be 110jterm. I can give it a description if you want. I'm going to keep the code private, but if you're in my class, we will be needing, this is important, to add me as a collaborator. An organization, you really don't need to worry about that. I'm going to go ahead and hit publish repository, and it should, we'll see, bam, it's all up on GitHub now. Cool thing about GitHub Desktop, because it is so, there are all kinds of GitHub desktops. There's SourceForge has one, a whole bunch of different companies have tools that work just like GitHub Desktop. But GitHub Desktop allows you to view your repository on GitHub. I'm going to go ahead and open on another screen, pull it over. There it is, right? It's got my gitignore, git attributes, my project settings, packages, assets. If I go here to my commits, I'll see here's all my commits. Now this one, it says I have two called initial commit. As soon as you make a repository, it actually makes a commit named initial commit. So let's just pretend this one's not here, okay? Let's not worry about it. Initial commit is the one that I just pushed up. You can see that it was committed 1 minute ago. Now, this is very cool, right? If I go and I make a change, let's say I move this guy and save it, I should be able to go to GitHub and say, oh, look, there's a scene change. Now, Unity's scene changes are actually a little bit hard to see and interpret. If I go and change something in my code, this is just a script I have from a previous video, and say, I don't know, print object.rotation, I'll see a more easy to read change. It actually goes into the code and says, oh, okay, you added this line. Now, I can right click on this and discard the change. And if I go back over to my Visual Studio, see it's gone. Now I'm going to add one more. Print object.rotation. I'm just going to add it back. And we'll see that both are here. And I'm going to go ahead and discard all changes. And I just got here by right-clicking on my two changed files. I can discard all. It's going to be like, are you sure? Yep. And that sets me straight back to the last time I committed to this branch, my main branch. And you can think of the main branch as the tree trunk on your tree, okay? And that metaphor is going to come in a little bit later. Now, because I changed the scene, it's going to ask me to reload it, and we'll see that everything is going back to normal. Actually, it looks like it deleted my... Oh, because I hadn't saved the scene. All right, so that's a big thing. If you don't save things, when I made this square earlier, I hadn't saved. It's going to go back to whatever the previous... It's like a checkpoint. Whatever the previous unsaved data is there. Or the previous saved data is there. That's what it's going to go back to. Now, something that when you're working on a project by yourself, you don't need to worry about. You can just keep committing to main. When you're working with others, you have to do something called using branches. Okay? So a branch, I really want you to think of, it's going to be a little bit of a weird tree. Let me see if I can go to Google Sketchpad. Is that still a thing? Hey, look at that. Okay. So you can think of GitHub as, like I said, a tree. So, oh, that's awful. Okay. Let's go to, let's just do this. This should work. It is a tree. I would prefer if that was a bit thicker of a line, but that's okay. Oh, God. Sorry, a little bit of scuff here for you guys, just for you. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Bam. That's too much. There we go. Okay. Now let's refresh the page. And do you want to reattempt to load? Nope. Thank you. All right. There's our main branch, right? Now, when you're working with other people, you generally will have people make other branches that come out like this, right? They'll be like, hey, I'm starting from this part of the code and I'm working on, I don't know, level 2. Let's say that. And then they're going, working. And then eventually they take that and they merge it back into the main branch. And this allows people to collaborate on things at different times. Let's say this line was somebody working on level 3, and then they come in and they add things. Now, generally, you're going to want to make you're going to want to be merging things in very often. Sometimes you'll be merging things in every day in some jobs, because sometimes you might have, let's say there's somebody working way at the start on something and they're changing a bunch of code and they changed a script that you worked on, and you both try and merge here. Well, now there's two different versions of the code trying to get into main. And that means then that there is going to be what we call a merge conflict, which is a pain in the butt to fix. Now, it is fixable. It's always fixable. Most of the time, if you know how to fix them, it takes only a couple minutes, right? But you do run the risk of somebody losing work. We're not going to get into fixing merge conflicts here. It'll be something that more organically happens as you guys run into them, because it's totally normal to run into them. But the fewer that we need to run into, the better. So communicating with your team, talking about what you're working on, and then being ready to sit down and like parse through the merge conflicts is vital to proper software development. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make a branch. Let's call this first non-main branch. Okay, if I create this branch, we're going to go in here to Unity, and we'll see nothing's changed because we just are still at the front of the branch. I'm going to go ahead and make a triangle and a square, and I'm going to save. And I'm going to commit this to my branch, publish the branch, and now if I go to my little list here, you'll see that I have branch and my default branch. If I go back to main, it's like a little time machine. I can go back and it's got nothing here, because on the main branch, that tree trunk is still, here, let me go back to my drawing. That tree trunk is still, tree trunk is still here, okay? The branch is up here now, right? If I go back to GitHub Desktop, had it on the other screen, I can switch back to my main branch and jump forward in time for the project, right? Now I have my two shapes. Now, if I want to get this into main so everybody can have my new level, I would view on GitHub, and I would go to my branches. Now, there's a little bit of a cheat here. If you can go to, this is going to take you straight to your branch, but I'm going to click on this little drop down and go to that branch and make sure it's everything I want. The last thing I did was update sample scene. And if I go to pull request, I can hit new pull request. I'm going to be merging something into my main branch. Well, the thing I want to merge is that first non-main branch I made, the one with those two shapes. And we'll get to see all the different changes, right? This isn't generally the best way to look at it. You'd want to hit create pull request. We can name it whatever so everybody can see what we're bringing in. Updated scene with a square and triangle. And then we create the pull request. Now, when you create a pull request, it immediately checks for merge conflicts. If there are any, you can go ahead and, we're just going to get rid of this. It's going to go and tell you what they are, and it'll help you figure out what they are, and then you can go into your Visual Studio and fix it. But if we go to commits or file changes, we'll be able to see, hey, we added things to sample scene Unity, and this is everything we added. Now, scenes are not always the greatest, right? They don't always, this is not really something that's very readable, but if it was code, just like we saw earlier, it would show you exactly what lines have changed, okay? So now this pull request, it's open, it's all good. We have no merge conflicts, so I'm going to merge the pull request. And then it's going to say, hey, are you sure? And I'm going to confirm. This makes it merged. It's generally safe to delete the branch afterwards. You have time to restore it if you need it for whatever reason. And if I go over to GitHub, the tricky thing here is you still have the branch on your computer, right? It saved a version of your project to your computer. I could go ahead and make a new commit, make some changes, and then bring my branch back just fine. And it would GitHub would see it as a new one, but on my computer it would see it with all its history. That being said, if I go back to main now, it doesn't automatically update. That's what this fetch origin is for. I'm gonna fetch origin, and I'm gonna see, oh, hey, I have things to pull. And if I pull, I can go to my history and see, okay, I merged this pull request in. It said updated scene with square and triangle. Okay, all right, looks good. Let's go see what I did. Kind of talking to myself here, feels a little weird. If I go to Unity, I can see I am on my main branch and I have my changes on the main branch. Now, I'm not going to get into merge conflicts because I think that's something better experienced in the wild, as you run into them. But that's generally what GitHub's for. It's great for collaboration, and it's really great for backing up your work. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was useful, and talk to you later.